All right, we are continuing on with rational equations, but this time we are solving them. So we have two methods of solving rational equations. One is making a proportion and cross multiplying. The other one is using the least common denominator, and I'm going to be showing you each situation that you would use this method. So starting with problem number 1 here, because I have one expression on each side, I'm going to use my proportion method and just cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply here, and I'll get that 7x is equal to 4 times x minus 6. And I'll need to distribute that 4 to what's inside my parentheses, and I'll get 4x minus 24. Then to solve for x, I want to get all my variables on one side. And so I have that 3x is equal to negative 24. Divide by 3 on both sides, and I get that x is equal to minus 8. So that one's not too bad. Now, if we move on to number 4 down here, again, I have one expression on each side, so I'm going to do my proportion method and cross multiply again. So that 3 times 8 is going to give me 24. Now, I have two binomials that are being multiplied by each other, so I'm going to have to FOIL. So starting with my first two, I'll get m squared. Middle 2 gives me 3m. Outer gives me minus 2m, and my last ones gives me minus 6. So now I want to combine those two terms in the middle, and finally I'll have m squared plus m minus 6. Now to solve for this m, I want to get all my numbers on one side, so I'm going to move that 24 over, and that leaves me with m squared plus m minus 30 equals 0. Now, this is what we call a quadratic. Remember, this is a quadratic. So there's two ways that I can solve this. I can either factor it, if that's possible, or I can use the quadratic formula. So I want to try to factor first because that's typically the easier, quicker way to do this. So if I factor that trinomial, I have my coefficient in the front is just 1, so I'm going to have m and m. And then I have minus 30 on the outside and positive 1 in the middle. So I need factors of negative 30 that add to 1. And that's going to be positive 6 and minus 5. And that is equal to 0. So now to solve for m, just like we did when we were solving this kind of thing when graphing, I have to set each parentheses equal to 0 and solve. And when I do that, I'm going to get that m is equal to minus 6. And m is equal to positive 5. So this one has two solutions. Number 4 has two solutions. So both of those were using method 1 to solve our rational equation. I am now going to show you what it looks like when you have to use the second method, your least common multiple. So if we take a look here at number 7, do you see how on the left side I have two expressions? That tells me that I have to multiply by my least common denominator. So looking at my denominators here, I have 3n and 6. So out of those 3n and 6, my least common denominator is going to be 6n. So now that I know what my least common denominator is, I want to multiply every single part of my expression by 6n over 1. Okay? So this first term is going to give me 24n over 3. Then I'm going to get 42n over n. And lastly, 6n over 6. So I have now multiplied each term by my least common denominator. Now I want to simplify each of these fractions. So this will simplify to 8n, 42, and n. So now I have a simple two-step equation that I can easily solve. So I'm going to move my 8n to the other side so all of my variables are together. Make some room up top. And we're just going to solve this two-step equation. So after I subtract that 8n on both sides, I'm left with minus 42 equals minus 7n. Divide both sides by that minus 7, and I get that n is equal to positive 6. And that is our solution to number 4. So let's take a look at another problem where I would need to use my least common denominator. Let's take a look at number 10. So on number 10, I have 3w minus 3, w minus 1, and 9. And so my least common denominator for this one is going to be 9 times w minus 1. So I'm going to multiply each of these three terms by 9w minus 1. So 9w minus 1 times 13. And in the bottom here, I see I can factor this denominator of the first term. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in case that helps me out down the road. Then I have, again, 9w minus 1 equal to w times 9w minus 1 over 9. So I have now multiplied by my least common denominator, and I want to cancel common factors and reduce and simplify these fractions. So on this first one, I can cancel this. I have 9 over 3, which simplifies to 3. 3 times 13 is 39, so that gives me 39. This also cancels, so I have minus 9. And on this last one, I have these 9's cancel, and I'm left with just w times w minus 1. Okay, so 39 minus 9 is 30, and that is equal to w squared minus w. I got that by distributing this w into my parentheses. And now again, I want to get everything on one side, so I'm going to move that 30 over. Let's give us some more room to work up here at the top. And so after I have moved that 30 over, I'm going to end up with w squared minus w minus 30 equals 0. And again, I want to try to factor because that's easier than doing the quadratic formula. So my leading coefficient is 1, so I can just have w and w. Then I need factors of negative 30 that add to negative 1, and that's going to be minus 6 and plus 5, and that equals 0. So remember, we're not done yet. We still have to solve for w, and we do that by setting what's inside each parentheses equal to 0. So when I set w minus 6 equal to 0, I'm going to get that w is equal to 6. And when I set w plus 5 equal to 0, I'm going to get that w is equal to minus 5. Oops, way too many marks there. W is equal to minus 5. So I have two solutions to this problem as well.